In this course, we will learn about the control systems of the vehicle. Control systems are in the cab devices that allow the driver to control a vehicle. We will cover the clutching gear shift pattern, we will introduce you to the parking brake control valves, and we will talk about the various gauges you see and let you know the appropriate levels. The clutch brake needs a certain amount of free play. Say you're stopped, the truck is in gear, and you have the clutch pushed to the floor. You want to put the truck into motion, so you slowly lift your leg to release the clutch. The moment the truck starts to move is the moment the clutch disengages itself. The truck should start to move about 1.5 inches before your foot gets to the top. This 1.5 inch gap is considered free play. If your leg gets to the top of the clutch before the truck starts to move, this is wrong. The clutch on the truck has no free play and needs an adjustment. The easiest way to determine the amount of free play is to stand on the ground with the driver's door open, make sure the truck is off and the keys are in your pocket. Push down on the clutch with your hand. The free movement you feel before the clutch gets stiff is considered free play. If you can push the clutch by hand 1 inch or more, you have adequate free play. If the clutch is stiff at the very top, you need to get it adjusted as soon as possible. This is a sign that the clutch is going out. The clutch brake is part of the clutch system. The only time you need to activate the clutch brake is when the vehicle is stopped. The clutch stops the transmission from spinning and allows you to put the truck into first or reverse gears. You do not have to do anything special to activate the clutch brake. The clutch brake is automatically engaged when the pedal is within 1 to 2 inches from the floor. You'll notice this when you get to the street. If you're having a hard time getting the truck into gear while driving, one of the causes may be that you have pushed the clutch in too far and engaged the clutch brake. Don't worry, we have some techniques to help you avoid doing this. I want to introduce you to the shift pattern. We will cover the shift pattern and we will cover the shifting and detailing later. The most common type of transmission is a 9-speed. All transmissions are based on this pattern. Do you see on the screen the 2/6 and the 3/7? Your shift gears 1 through 5 according to the pattern shown. When you get to 5, you pull up the splitter valve and start off on the 6th position. When you are in gear 6 through 9, we call that the top, as in the top half of the transmission. We will call gears 1 through 5 the bottom half of the transmission. A 13-speed uses the same shift pattern as a 9. You will shift through the bottom gears 1 through 4 and pull up the splitter valve to start over in the number 5 position, just as you did with the 9-speed. Once you're in the top half of the transmission, which is gears 5 through 8, you have the ability to split each gear. This is basically an overdrive. So in the top gears, you have a regular 5 and 5 overdrive and a 6 regular and a 6 overdrive. This is a 13-speed transmission. In the cab, you will notice 3 different types of braking systems. The system you are most familiar with is called the service brake. You control the service brake with the foot pedal, just like in a car. The foot brake pedal operates the brakes on both the tractor and the trailer. You will also notice a hand-controlled lever. You see the number 2 on the screen? You'll pull the lever to activate only the trailer brakes. The tractor brakes will not be activated. You will hear us call it the Johnson bar. We will show you how to use it outside it. The third type of an in-cab brake system is the parking brake. It is controlled by these trailer air supplied valves. When they are pulled out, the brakes are locked and safe for parking. It is similar to the hand brake in your car. The trailer air supply valve does just that. It supplies air to the trailers. When it is pushed in, it is open and provides air to the trailer brakes, which releases the parking brake. When it's pulled out, it closes off the air supply to the trailer and locks the trailer brakes. Never use this valve as a parking brake. Make sure you pull out the yellow and red valves for parking. The interaxle differential lock is used to lock or unlock the tractor's rear tandem axles. It is only to be used to free a stuck vehicle or on ice. We never drive with the interaxle differential in the lock position. It can damage the transmission. Although we never drive it in normal speeds, with interaxle differential in the lock position, it can be a useful tool. The 2 rear axles of a tractor will spin independently of each other under normal conditions. If you lock the differential, you can equalize the power to each axle to keep the wheels from spinning. For instance, if you're stuck on snow or ice in a parking lot, it will help you to get both axles turning. Under normal driving conditions, keep the switch in the unlocked position. It allows the axles to turn independently. You will damage the transmission, specifically the rear end, if you drive in the locked position while on dry pavement. You'll have many of the same gauges in your truck as in your car. You will have a speedometer. In the truck, you need to make it a habit of checking the speedometer as you are driving. If you do not do this already, you need to make this a habit in part of your regular driving routine. Tachometer tells you how fast the engine is turning. It measures the speed in revolutions per minute, or RPMs. You probably have one in your car. The red line on a truck is much lower than a car. The most you can go in a big truck is about 2,500 RPMs. The tachometer will be the greatest tool you have when you're learning to shift. A big truck has a couple of sweet spots. It likes to shift between 12 and 1,500 RPMs, and another sweet spot between 17 to 1,900 RPMs. We will go into this in detail during the shifting class. Of course, we have a fuel gauge. Fuel gauges in trucks are notorious for being inaccurate. You will learn the gauge in your own truck. You will learn how long you can let it go, when to trust it, and when not to. The nice thing about a big truck is the fuel tanks are big and have open access. When in doubt, you can always take off the cap and look inside. The voltmeter shows the batteries are charging. Some will be colored red, yellow, or green. If the needle is in the green area, then the batteries are charging. The voltmeter should show 12 to 14 volts. You may have a problem with the charging system if the volts are too low or too high. The ammeter gauge has been all but forgotten in most vehicles. An ammeter is a measuring instrument used to measure the electric current in the circuit. Electric currents are measured in amperes, hence the name. An ammeter measures the direction and course of electricity flowing through it. With the ammeter correctly installed, it will tell us whether electricity is flowing out of the battery or into the battery. Positive amps. If you just start it up, it is normal. If it's positive too long, the battery is not taking a charge. If you have 0 amps, the alternator is handling the entire electrical load, including keeping the battery charged. Negative amps, you are taking capacity out of the battery. There can be several causes, but they all add up to one thing. The alternator is not carrying the electrical load of the truck. The battery is chipping in, and your electrics will die when the battery is depleted. This gauge shows the pressure in your air tanks, which controls your brake system. It is one of the most important gauges in the cap to locate and monitor. Air pressure builds when the engine is started. The needle fluctuates and is controlled by the air compressor governor. The normal range is between 90 to 120 psi. We will cover the brake system in detail later. This gauge monitors the oil pressure in the engine. Normal operating range at an idle is 5 to 20 psi. While you are operating, the normal range is 35 to 75 psi. You need to monitor this gauge throughout each trip. Low dropping or fluctuating oil pressure can destroy the engine. You must stop the vehicle immediately. Here's another critical gauge. The coolant temp gauge shows the temperatures of the cooling system. Normal operating range is 170 to 190 degrees. You need to shut down the vehicle immediately if the engine is overheating and determine the cause. Overheating can be caused by anything that decreases the cooling system's ability to absorb, transport, or dissipate heat. Some trucks will have an oil temperature gauge. An empty truck will have a lower oil temperature. A loaded truck will have a higher oil temperature. The normal range for a light truck is 180 to 225 degrees. A loaded truck can run a little hotter, between 250 to 265 degrees.